This new IEM has a lot to live up to. The legendary reputation of the Blessing 2 Dusk, and over a year of hype as it was developed. The new Moondrop and Crinacle Dusk had to be a real hit, and so far it seems that everyone who's heard it has had really positive things to say about it. But I do have some comments. Hey everyone, I'm Jamie, and this is The Dusk. It's been a long wait, but it's finally here. Now, for full disclosure, this IEM was sent for review by Shenzhen Audio, but I won't be holding back any critiques. This is a big launch, and these are my honest opinions based on my experience using them. The Dusk is a successor to the much beloved Blessing 2 Dusk. While this was initially based on the Blessing 3 platform, in development the Blessing name was dropped as two of the drivers were swapped out from BA tweeters in favor of microplanar tweeters to achieve the desired tuning without the hiccups that they were facing before with their old drivers. I've said in the past that I believe the build, comfort, and unboxing presentation can play a lot into the user experience, and how they may perceive the quality of an IEM. The Dusk does a lot of this well, although there are some things that I do feel could be improved, especially for a launch that's quite this big. We start with the box with the outer sleeve that displays the updated version of the Crinacle waifu, and then the main box is a large square cardboard box that's actually quite sturdy and has some decent weight to it. The top is hinged and held closed with a magnet. When you open it, the backside of the box folds down to prop the top open, more like a display case rather than just a typical cardboard box. And you're presented with a case, which contains the two cables and also the IEMs. The Dusks themselves are resin shells that feel high quality, and they have forged carbon composite faceplates. Basically, it's made of carbon fiber and resin, but instead of using a continuous woven sheet of carbon fiber, it uses chopped fibers that are combined with resin and pressed into a mold. This gives them a unique, almost wood grain-like look that changes as the light hits it. I was curious what effects carbon fiber would have on the sound, so I asked on Twitter if having a carbon fiber faceplate would make the IEM sound faster. Luckily, I was able to get an expert answer, as Dr. Sean Oliver responded and clarified that it makes the bass lighter. So, mystery solved. Jokes aside, I do like this faceplate a lot better than the Blessing 3 faceplate. You'll probably also be happy to hear that the new Dusk carries over the smaller nozzle from the Blessing 3. At 5.6mm, it's quite a bit smaller than the Blessing 2 Dusk nozzle, which was 6.4mm wide. As for the tips, it comes with 3 sizes of spring tips, which is something you'll definitely have to consider as some aren't a fan of spring tips. I myself don't mind them, but I do tend to use a size down as I feel that gives me a better seal when using them. Too large and they can fold in on themselves and break the seal. The cables are okay. The 3.5 cable is the same one that comes with the Blessing 3. It's not bad, but it does feel underwhelming and a bit cheap. The aluminum connector cover and Y-split also feel a bit too rough for my liking when paired with an IEM that's this quality. They have a very roughed brushed metal finish that doesn't really fit the aesthetic, and then the ends are just kind of cut, and they aren't finished like they've been filed or deburred properly. They still have a bit of an edge that just makes them feel cheaper to hold. Luckily, the cable itself doesn't seem like it wants to tangle, which is an improvement over the cable that came with the Blessing 2 Dusk. The free DSP cable, though, is built a bit better and has a nicer overall finish. It's essentially the same cable that is used with other Moondrop IEMs that use a free DSP cable, such as the Moondrop May. So, the moment of truth, does the sound live up to the Blessing 2 Dusk? In analog mode, yeah, actually. The sound of Dusk in analog mode is essentially the same as the Blessing 2 Dusk, but just with a little bit better bass tactility and a bit more upper treble. This has been probably the main point of divide for people is the treble though. For some, it is a bit too much, and some say that they need the DSP adjustment to fully enjoy this IEM. For me, I don't mind it that much. I found the Blessing 2 Dusk to be a bit more fatiguing to my ear when playing at louder volumes. And I think that's because the upper mids and lower treble of the Blessing 2 Dusk are a bit more pronounced, and that's a bit of a sensitive area for me. The Dusk is slightly lower in that region, and then the upper treble, like the air frequencies, are boosted more. Now this isn't perfect, and some instruments like cymbals and hi-hats are a little bit more forward than you may hear on some other IEMs, but it was never at a level that I found uncomfortable. It's one of those IEMs that I think might take a moment to adjust to it, since it's a little bit different than what might be typical, but after a quick adjustment period, I do actually quite like them. I found that something else that I liked about the analog tuning was its bass presentation. Kick drums feel more snappy and bass plucks were a bit more clear as well. I enjoyed my time listening to it in analog mode quite a bit. Most others that I've talked to who have been trying this have said that they prefer the DSP tuning mode, and I can see why. but I tend to listen at lower volume levels, so that may also be a factor on why my opinion differs from some others. And I do know that is a factor that affects my opinion of the DSP cable. Now getting into the DSP mode, I'm not a fan of the free DSP cable, and I really don't like the Moondrop app. The IEM and DSP mode sounds actually quite excellent. The two things, the cable itself and the app, really made me want to switch back to using analog. The default DSP tuning is an improvement that cleans up the IEM. It applies 3 small peak filters that give the IEM a slight bit more down-tilted response, which actually ends up conforming closer to the 5128 curve, and in theory should sound a little bit closer to how we would expect headphones to sound, regarding the lower mid-range. They end up having more of a natural mid-range sound, and it brings down the treble slightly. The bass does sound a little bit less punchy to me, but the overall tone is improved. I could listen to the adjusted tuning all day and not really think about changing it. My main issue though comes with how I listen to the IEMs throughout the day. It's one thing to just sit down and listen to music and turn it up. In that case, the cable works perfectly fine and it's an excellent plug and play system. It just works, and 90% of the time you probably won't notice anything different in terms of sound quality between using the DSP cable and just using it analog. The issue for me comes when I'm listening to YouTube or podcasts in the background, and when my volume is set a bit lower. I do this almost every day when I'm at work. I just plug in a pair of IEMs, turn down the volume to a comfortable level, and just listen to YouTube or something. And when there's no background music playing and it's just stop and start audio, like if someone's talking, I can hear sweeping sound artifacts as the person is talking. It's only really audible when the volume is turned down more, so the audio that you're listening to isn't really masking it, but it is just a thing that bothers me and distracts me from my overall listening experience. I had the same issue with the Moondrop May and its free DSP cable, and I hear it regardless if it's plugged into my iPhone, my older Samsung phone, or just my PC. I also tried it with some test tones and just some simple beats, and for me at least, when I'm listening at low volume, it's always there somewhere in the mix. But it's never an issue when I'm using the analog cable and just plugging it into an Apple dongle or some other source. Luckily though, for most people, this probably won't be an issue when playing music or just turning up the volume a bit more. I asked around as well with some others who have been trying this IEM, and it didn't seem to be any sort of serious problem for anyone else. So this might be just more of my own nitpick, but it's just something from my own experience that I felt I had to talk about. The other issue though that everyone has been complaining about is the Moondrop app to change the DSP settings. The app only works on Android, and you need to install the APK file from the Moondrop website to use it. For iOS or computer users, you can adjust the DSP settings with an Android device, and then it will save that preset on the cable and you can use that across different devices. But you can't change any of the settings unless you're using an Android device and that app. The app itself does have a few different presets, although my favorite is the default. So that's the new Dusk. In short, the Blessing 2 Dusk was a successful and legendary IEM that could still play in today's market, and this is just a continuation of that. If you already have a Blessing 2 Dusk, I wouldn't run out and buy this as a major upgrade. But if you were wanting a Blessing 2 Dusk before, and were disappointed that it was discontinued, or you just want a new Dusk, I think this does fill that spot perfectly in analog mode, and if you want the convenience of USB-C, plug and play, or just a slightly better tuning, the DSP cable may be the way to go for you as well. For myself, I am happy with how the Dusk turned out, and I think I'll probably continue to use it in analog mode just for the most part going forward. I might just change the cable out to something that I like a bit more, something that feels a bit better quality. Maybe like the Truthier OLED cable.